the broadcast that changed everything. The screen flickered across every major channel in the galaxy. Millions of beings from dozens of star systems watched in eerie silence, their faces illuminated by the cold, blue glow of the broadcast. On the platform of the Imperial High Tribunal stood a young human woman, her hands bound and her white dress stained faintly with dust and sweat. She looked around with calm eyes, the slightest tremor in her shoulders betraying the fear that had long since been mastered. The Galactic Empire had prepared this moment to entertain, to humiliate, and to assert dominance over what they considered a weak species. The Executioner, a towering alien in bronze armor, raised his energy weapon. A hush fell over the assembled officials and the millions watching from afar. The tribunal's holographic banners displayed proclamations of human defiance and subversive activities, but the woman remained still, her gaze steady. To the Empire, she was nothing more than a human, fragile, sentimental, and expendable. They had no idea who she truly was. Your species thrives on emotion. The tribunal's head intoned, his voice distorted through the translation matrix. This is why you are weak. This is why you must learn your place. The woman said nothing. She did not flinch, did not plead, and did not scream. Her quiet courage seemed almost mocking in the eyes of the Empire. The weapon hummed to life, a pale blue beam coalescing into a devastating pulse. And then it ended. The beam struck, and the broadcast erupted in cheers and laughter from the Empire's officials. A human life extinguished in front of millions. Proof of power, proof of control. The audience saw only what they wanted to see, the futility of humanity. But across the galaxy, there were eyes that did not cheer, eyes that did not move, eyes that registered every detail with surgical precision. On a remote, unregistered orbital station near the edge of human-controlled space, a man sat in the dark. The room was small and cluttered with relics of a past war. A sniper rifle polished to near perfection, photographs of a smiling little girl, a faded metal pin to a wooden plaque. He did not cry. He did not shout. He did not even blink for a moment as the execution unfolded. When the screen froze on her face, the man reached out and gently touched the monitor, tracing the outline of her features with a gloved finger. He knew her. He had raised her, trained her, and loved her. She had always believed that diplomacy and empathy could change the universe. Now, the universe had taught her the hard truth. Elias Vorn, once a legend among human military forces, once known as the man who never misses twice, had retired years ago. He had hung up his rifle to raise a daughter in peace, far from the violence that had defined his life. But now that peace was gone, it had been ripped from him in a single moment of imperial hubris. He paused only to let the silence stretch, letting the weight of the moment sink in. Then, with methodical calm, he rose. His movements were deliberate, each step echoing in the empty chamber. His hand rested on the sniper rifle that had ended wars quietly and efficiently. Today, it would have a single purpose: to remind the galaxy that humans may be underestimated, but they are never powerless. Meanwhile, across Earth and its colonies, millions of humans watched the broadcast. There were no riots, no immediate retaliation, no rash proclamations of war. There was only quiet fury, a slow, methodical anger that settled deep into the bones of humanity. The Empire had expected fear. They had expected compliance. What they did not anticipate was that humans could transform grief into strategy, loss into inevitability, and the murder of one woman into a reckoning for billions. Elias turned off the broadcast and surveyed his small arsenal. Satellites lay dormant. Weapons long forbidden by treaties were stored in hidden bays, and communication channels were secure. He did not need permission from governments, alliances, or councils. He needed nothing but patience, precision, and resolve. The Empire had made a mistake that could not be undone. They had taken a life they thought inconsequential. They had failed to see the daughter they had killed had a father, and he was not the type of man to forget, forgive, or retreat. Outside the orbital station, the void stretched infinitely, cold, and silent. Yet in that silence, a storm was forming. One man, one rifle, and the memory of a daughter were enough to turn fear into a weapon far more precise and devastating than any fleet, any army, or any technology the Empire could muster. The moment had passed for mercy. The moment for waiting had ended. Now, the crosshairs were set, the strategy plotted, and a reckoning would begin. Elias lifted his rifle, checking the scope one last time. The reflection of distant stars shimmered on the barrel, but his focus was unwavering. He whispered softly, more to himself than anyone else. "You should have known. You never kill a human and expect nothing in return." And in that quiet, unremarkable room, the galaxy shifted. The man who never misses twice. The galaxy believed Elias Vorn was retired, forgotten, buried beneath layers of bureaucracy and peace treaties. But humans do not forget. They simply wait. From his hidden orbital station, Elias surveyed the Imperial networks. Star systems glimmered like pinpricks in the void, each one mapped and monitored in real time. To the Empire, he was a ghost. To humanity, he was a promise, the consequence of arrogance. He began with reconnaissance. Satellites, long decommissioned for human secrecy, flickered to life, streaming data across encrypted channels. Fleet movements, planetary defenses, communication relays, all cataloged with meticulous precision. Elias did not attack immediately. Patience was part of his craft. A sniper does not rush a shot. He waits until every variable is accounted for. Meanwhile, across the Empire, panic began to spread. Commanders noticed the first anomalies. A small fleet suddenly disabled, its control systems fried by a perfect energy discharge, no enemy ships visible. Then another, then another. Each incident bore the same hallmarks: surgical strikes, zero collateral damage, and distances impossible by conventional understanding. The Emperor demanded explanations. His generals scrambled, but no reports were clear, no records consistent. Every intelligence channel led to dead ends. And somewhere in the void, Elias Vorn was already 2 steps ahead. Elias remembered the daughter he had raised, her laughter echoing in their secluded home on a distant human colony. She had once asked him why he always waited so long to act. "Because, my dear," he had said, cradling her in the dark as they watched twin moons rise over the horizon. "When a human takes aim, the universe must learn respect." Now that lesson would reach the entire empire. He began his campaign in silence. Imperial governors, known for their cruelty toward human colonies, started disappearing. One by one, in fleets and citadels, they fell, not by bombs, not by soldiers, but by one perfect shot, each fired from impossible distances through defenses no empire had thought penetrable. The media tried to report it as accidents, malfunctions in defensive systems. But the empire knew better. Whispers of a human sniper, long considered a myth, began circulating among officers. They dismissed it at first, but as more high-value targets were eliminated, fear replaced arrogance. Elias's tactics were not mindless destruction. He was surgical, deliberate, almost artistic. Each kill sent a message. The Empire could not hide behind fleets or fortresses. And every strike reminded him of his daughter, the girl the galaxy had failed to protect. He did not rush. He did not indulge in spectacle. Each move was calculated to create maximum strategic and psychological effect. He also began to manipulate Imperial communications, sending cryptic messages through hijacked broadcasts. "You killed her to teach humanity fear. I will teach you accuracy." The messages spread like wildfire, sowing paranoia in the ranks of Imperial officers. Fleets turned inward, defending themselves from phantom threats. The Empire, which once prided itself on order and control, descended into chaos. Back on Earth, humans watched, not in celebration, not in panic, but in quiet acknowledgement. They knew their father had returned. They did not need fleets or politicians to fight the battle. One man, one purpose was enough. Humanity had always understood that when the odds are against them, precision and patience often outweigh brute force. Elias began contacting hidden human assets, old allies, engineers, and recon teams who had disappeared into the edges of space. They reactivated sleeper satellites, pre-treaty weapons, and secret orbital platforms. Everything was integrated into a single, coordinated network. It was a quiet war, invisible to the Empire, but deadly nonetheless. During this time, he studied the Empire's hierarchy, noting vulnerabilities in communications, energy shields, and fleet logistics. Each observation became a plan, each plan a blueprint for the inevitable strike. Despite the violence he now orchestrated, Elias did not lose himself to anger. He worked with the clarity of someone who knew exactly what was at stake. His daughter's life had been stolen, and he was the instrument through which the galaxy would understand the true cost of underestimating a human. At the orbital station, he stood over a map of the galaxy, his finger tracing the projected paths of Imperial fleets. He paused on a particular star system, home to a high-ranking council official who had authorized the daughter's execution. Soon, Elias murmured, adjusting the scope of his sniper rifle. Soon you will see what it means to target a human without knowing whose child she is. And somewhere across the void, the Empire shivered. They had thought a single human woman was disposable. They had been wrong. They had underestimated patience. They had underestimated precision. And they had underestimated human resolve. The first shots of the war had been fired, though no one had declared it. Across hundreds of light years, the whispers began. The man who never misses twice had returned. And the galaxy would remember every strike. The storm was coming. Not a fleet, not an army, just one man, his rifle, and a promise. The Empire believed they were untouchable. They had yet to realize that the deadliest human is the one they never see coming. 1,000 light years, one trigger pull. Across the void, the Galactic Empire scrambled. Star systems teetered on the brink of chaos. Imperial fleets that once patrolled the outer colonies like predator ships now moved defensively, shielding command centers and supply convoys. Yet, no matter how far they shifted, Elias Vorn remained 2 steps ahead. He struck without warning. From the shadows of a rogue asteroid belt, he disabled a cruiser-class vessel, slicing through its power conduits in a single, invisible shot. Officers aboard panicked, shields collapsing, systems failing. Not a single crew member survived, yet the ship's weapons never fired. The Empire was convinced it was a malfunction. Then came the next. High-ranking generals, gathered for a war council on a heavily shielded planet, died almost simultaneously in separate locations. Each strike bore the unmistakable signature of human precision. One shot, one breath, one target. The Emperor himself demanded an explanation, but his generals could only report fear and uncertainty. No security protocol, no defensive formation could explain the deaths. Elias's campaign was more than revenge. It was psychological warfare. He sent messages through hijacked Imperial channels, ensuring that every officer knew the strikes were deliberate. You executed one of us. I execute only those who deserve it. Every communication intensified paranoia. Officers questioned each other, fleets suspected sabotage, and political alliances began fracturing. The Empire had prided itself on control, but control was slipping like sand through grasping fingers. Meanwhile, Elias expanded his operations. Using dormant satellites and secret orbital stations, he monitored not just Imperial fleets, but also planetary energy grids, communication hubs, and transport lanes. He did not need to send armies. His vision was surgical. Each strike served a purpose: to dismantle the Empire's infrastructure methodically while leaving no trace of human involvement. Back on Earth, military analysts tracked the attacks in silence. They understood a truth the Empire refused to acknowledge. The strikes were impossible by conventional logic. It can't be one man, whispered Imperial defectors who had secretly fled to human systems. Yet Elias was indeed a single man. Just a sniper, his daughter's memory, and decades of training sharpened to lethal precision. He paused only to consider the human cost of war. Unlike the Empire, He did not enjoy collateral destruction. His strikes were precise because the unnecessary slaughter would dishonor his daughter's memory. She had spent her life saving lives, and her father would honor that with every calculated action. The Empire, however, misread his restraint as weakness. Believing that one human could not possibly orchestrate this, they retaliated with brutality. They captured colonies, executed civilians, and launched punitive strikes. But Elias had anticipated this. Every action only funneled them into traps, every fleet drawn into calculated ambushes that minimized human exposure and maximized imperial losses. Elias also studied the hierarchy, identifying the emperor's key advisors and bodyguards. He traced the routes of critical shipments, predicted fleet patrol patterns, and noted the vulnerabilities in planetary defense grids. Each observation was filed meticulously. The galaxy was becoming his map, every star a coordinate in the campaign for justice. He chose to strike symbolic targets, not random ones. Each kill carried meaning. Officers who had ordered the broadcast of his daughter's execution, commanders who had overseen human suffering, bureaucrats who had signed away the rights of colonies without thought. When the Empire tried to regroup, Elias unleashed an audacious maneuver. He used a decoy fleet he had hidden among asteroid shadows to draw Imperial forces away from key planets, then disabled a shield generator protecting a major administrative hub with a single shot fired from light years away. The entire operation was over in minutes, leaving the Empire's leadership scrambling for explanations. Then came the message. Elias hijacked the same network used to broadcast his daughter's death, displaying his face to the entire Empire for the first time. Calm, controlled, expressionless, he spoke once. "You killed her to teach humanity fear. I will teach you accuracy." The broadcast went viral across Imperial channels. Soldiers froze. Officers debated whether to retreat or press on. The Empire's carefully cultivated image of invincibility began to crumble. Rumors of the human sniper spread like wildfire, sowing panic faster than fleets could respond. Through it all, Elias maintained his detachment. He knew the battle was not over. The Emperor remained alive, fleets were still operational, and human patience had limits. But he also knew the principle that had guided him through decades of war. The perfect shot is more than distance and aim. It is timing, calculation, and the willingness to wait until the moment is undeniable. By the end of the chapter, the galaxy had begun to realize a terrifying truth. The Empire had killed a human. They had underestimated what that truly meant. One man, a memory, and a rifle could destabilize fleets, governments, and entire star systems. And the Empire, vast and powerful as it was, could not stop him. Not yet. The storm was no longer approaching. It had already begun. The silence after the last shot. The Emperor's flagship orbited the heart of the Galactic Empire, a fortress of steel and energy that no human, no matter how skilled, had ever breached. Layers of shields, squadrons of escort fighters, and orbital batteries surrounded it like an impenetrable shell. Yet from a hidden outpost on the edge of known space, Elias Vorn watched every detail unfold. For weeks, he had studied their movements, analyzed their defensive protocols, and calculated the trajectory required for a single fatal shot. Every planet he had touched, every officer he had eliminated, had been part of a larger plan to reach the Emperor and force the galaxy to reckon with the consequences of underestimating humanity. Elias's hand rested on his sniper rifle, the polished metal reflecting the light of distant stars. His fingers were steady. His breathing was controlled. There was no room for error, no time for hesitation. He thought of his daughter, her laughter, her courage, the life stolen from her, and let that memory sharpen his focus. The Emperor was giving a speech, addressing the galaxy with pomp and arrogance. From his throne, he proclaimed the invincibility of the Empire and the futility of human resistance. Thousands of ships floated outside the flagship, a show of power meant to intimidate any lingering dissenters. Elias aligned the scope, accounting for gravitational lensing, shield interference, and orbital movement. Every variable had been calculated, every contingency prepared. The shot would be long, impossible, and flawless, a signature of the sniper's legacy. He exhaled slowly. The trigger pressed, and the rifle fired. Time seemed to distort. The bullet bent around gravitational anomalies, passing through layers of protective shields that no engineer had predicted could be penetrated. On board the Emperor's flagship, alarms blared. Energy barriers flickered. The Emperor's throne erupted in a shower of sparks. And then silence. The Emperor was gone. Chaos erupted instantly. Fleets scrambled, command chains collapsed, and communication satellites failed. The symbol of the Empire's unshakable authority had fallen with a single, impossibly precise shot. Across the galaxy, leaders realized that their systems were no longer secure, their fleets vulnerable, and their judgment fatally flawed. Elias did not celebrate. He did not gloat. He did not even smile. His mission had never been about revenge in the petty sense. It had been about justice, precision, and remembrance. One life taken had awakened the full force of human patience and resolve. One daughter's death had demonstrated a truth no empire could ignore. Humanity never forgets, and they never forgive easily. Back on Earth, citizens observed the aftermath. For once, no one cheered. The humans knew that the victory was measured not in destruction, but in principle. Humanity had survived where diplomacy had failed, and their patience had turned into an instrument of extraordinary power. Elias dismantled his orbital outpost carefully. Weapons were stored, satellites deactivated, and communication networks erased. He had no desire to rule, no ambition to conquer. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Now, he would vanish as quietly as he had reappeared. Before leaving, he visited the memorial he had created for his daughter on a remote human colony. The holographic projection of her smile flickered in the night air. He placed his rifle beside her grave, a final act of reverence and closure. His whispers carried across the empty colony. The Empire killed a human. They thought it would go unnoticed. Let them remember that every action has consequences. The galaxy, meanwhile, struggled to comprehend the event. Civil war erupted among imperial factions. Systems once united under a single banner fractured. Commanders argued, fleets retreated, and diplomats scrambled to understand what had happened. In the end, it was not the overwhelming firepower of humanity that conquered the Empire. It was one human, his skill, and the memory of his daughter. Elias disappeared into the void, leaving behind no trace. The story of a man who never misses twice became legend, whispered across colonies and star systems. Humans remembered that the greatest power did not lie in numbers or technology, but in patience, precision, and principle. In a quiet corner of the galaxy, a lone sniper walked among the stars. The war was over. The lesson had been delivered. Humanity had spoken without armies, without fleets, without rhetoric. Only through one man and the memory of a life the galaxy had failed to protect. And the galaxy would never forget. You can kill a human, but you should never kill the daughter of the one who never misses.